Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to our witnesses for joining us today. Section 702 expires April 19th next year. This gives us 4 months to put together a bill that prioritizes protecting Americans' fundamental constitutional rights while preserving a program that advances national security. Over the years, FISA has remained a subject of bipartisan collaboration on this committee, and I really want to thank Chairman Jordan and Chairman Biggs for working with all of the members of the committee to protect American civil liberties. When Congress reauthorized Section 702 last Congress, we gave the executive branch 2 years to show that it could protect civil liberties without the need for greater judicial oversight. We said that we would rely on the FBI's promise that the modest changes, like requiring approvals for U.S. person queries in the Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act, or RISA, would be enough to prevent greater violations of civil liberties. And we promised in turn that we would keep a close eye on how surveillance authorities are used during that time. This 2-year experiment's nearly complete now, and the results are alarming. We have witnessed an attack on the FBI's internal guardrails against abuse of Section 702 authorities, and an unprecedented increase in government surveillance, and an alarming coziness between the government and big tech, all of which puts Americans' data and civil liberties in jeopardy. We must strengthen federal law to protect American privacy and liberty, and Congress can start with FISA Section 702. As everybody in the room knows, 702 was never meant to apply to American citizens. Under the law, the government can only collect communications from targets who meet 2 criteria. 1, they've got to be non-U.S. persons, and 2, they've got to be located overseas. Americans and people on U.S. soil are protected by the 4th Amendment that prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures, guarantees the warrant requirement, and if law enforcement wants to look at American citizens' emails, they've got to get a warrant to do it. Despite all these protections, because Section 702 enables the intelligence community to ingest an incredible amount of data, American citizens' communications are often swept up in 702 collection. When that happens, those records end up in the FBI's massive database, and under current law, the FBI can search that database for U.S. person identifiers like Americans' names and street addresses for evidence of potential crimes or threats to national security. And as the chairman says, 10,000 people have access to that. Administrations of both parties have repeatedly abused this trove of U.S. person data. Recent audits show that FBI has searched the 702 database for candidates for federal office, Black Lives Matter protesters, and federal contractors, among other Americans who ought to be protected. 2 years since we enacted RISA, however you might have felt about the modest changes in that bill, the landscape has changed. For years, the leaders of this committee have warned of how executive branch surveillance powers could be abused by administrations that don't show sufficient care for the protection of civil liberties, and who use cutting-edge technology to spy on Americans, and who ignore basic principles of due process and constitutional freedom to achieve their own ends. In 2025, we know that we were right to worry. Here's just one example. I've been concerned for years about the U.S. government purchasing and compiling data about our own people. That problem has been compounded in this administration, which is actively building profiles on American citizens by combining data traditionally siloed in separate agencies, your tax returns, your health records, any interactions with police, with information purchased from tech companies. The administration is breaking down the very few guardrails that still exist on protecting our privacy, enabling the executive branch to track the movements of dissenters and supporters alike. So we have a lot to be concerned about at this point. I'm glad we're proceeding in a bipartisan way for the legislative defense of essential constitutional civil liberties. I look forward to hearing from all of our witnesses today on how we can properly protect American civil freedom in this perilous era. And I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman, the balance of my time.